Caffeine is an organic molecule that nearly every person will consume at some point in their lifetime. It acts as a central nervous system stimulant which causes an increased heart rate and increased alertness. This happens because caffeine has an extremely similar structure to adenosine, allowing for caffeine to mimic it inside the body. Caffeine is similar to this portion of adenosine because it has a double ring structure. This allows for caffeine to bind to some of adenosine's receptors inside the brain, causing less receptors to be open for adenosine to bind to, ultimately blocking the effects of adenosine. Next, caffeine's IUPAC name is 1,3,7-trimethylpurine 2,6-dione. Next, we will talk about some of caffeine's functional groups and their properties. Caffeine has two amide groups on the right-hand side of the molecule. They are both tertiary amides because they are both bonded to 3 carbons each. Also, unlike amine groups, they are less basic because they do not have full control of their electrons due to their delocalized pi orbital system caused by resonance. Next, these amide groups contain a special type of resonance called zwitterionic resonance that occurs because the two amide groups are double bonded to each other. Next, there is one amine group in the lower left-hand side of the molecule. These groups are usually more basic than amides because of their lone pair of electrons. However, in caffeine, the electrons of this nitrogen are part of the pi orbital system, making this the only basic nitrogen. Also, amines have the ability to hydrogen bond, increasing the molecule's solubility in polar solvents, and also raising the melting and boiling point of the molecule. Next, in the center of the molecule, there is one alkene group, which consists of a carbon-carbon double bond. This changes the hybridization of the carbons bonded together from sp3 to sp2 hybridized. Lastly, this molecule contains two carbonyl groups. These groups create a polarity within the molecule, causing an increased melting and boiling point. Also, due to oxygen's electronegativity, there is a partial positive charge on the carbon and a partial negative charge on the oxygen atom. Next, let's talk about the hybridization of each atom. This carbon is sp2 hybridized because it has 3 centers of electron density. There is 1, 2, 3 centers, and this nitrogen is also sp2 hybridized. It is not sp3 hybridized because there are only 3 centers of electron density. The lone pair is delocalized into the pi orbital system, so it does not count. Next, this carbon is sp3 hybridized because it has 4 centers of electron densities, 3 coming from hydrogen and 1 coming from the carbon-nitrogen bond. This carbon is sp2 hybridized. This oxygen is sp2 hybridized because it has 3 centers of electron density, 2 coming from lone pairs and 1 coming from a double bond. This nitrogen, like before, is sp2 hybridized. This carbon is sp3 hybridized. This carbon is sp2 hybridized. This oxygen again is sp2 hybridized. This carbon is sp2 hybridized. This nitrogen is sp2 hybridized. This carbon is sp3 hybridized. This carbon is sp2 hybridized. And this nitrogen is sp2 hybridized. All the atoms within the rings are sp2 hybridized. Next, let's talk about the electron geometry of the atoms. sp2 hybridized atoms are trigonal planar, and the electron geometry for sp3 hybridized atoms is tetrahedral. Next, there are 3 types of intermolecular forces present within this molecule: London dispersion forces, dipole-dipole attractions, and hydrogen bonding. London dispersion forces are the weakest type of attractions and are present within every molecule. They are the result of an instantaneous dipole created within a molecule. They are also known as van der Waals attractions. Next, there are dipole-dipole attractions that occur due to the polarity of the molecule. These IMFs are stronger than London dispersion forces, however, they are weaker than hydrogen bonding. Lastly, this molecule displays hydrogen bonding, which occurs between the hydrogen, nitrogens, and oxygens. Next, caffeine can form a resonance structure by bringing nitrogen's lone pair of electron onto the carbon-nitrogen bond. This then causes one of the bonds between carbon and oxygen to move up onto the oxygen. This also happens down here. This then causes a positive charge to occur in the nitrogens and a negative charge to occur in the oxygens. Also, caffeine displays its zwitterionic resonance because, in the resonance form, the 6-membered ring becomes an aromatic, causing the amide groups to be double bonded to each other. Lastly, caffeine has 8 chemically distinct carbons. Let's show them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Each line in the C13 NMR spectra displays a distinct carbon. Also, the further downfield the peak, the more d-shielded the nucleus is, because it is easier to flip the nucleus and cause it to resonate. An example of this is an example of the carbon on the carbonyl groups. Lastly, an example of a lowly d-shielded carbon nucleus is the 3-methyl groups.